I don't know about you, but sometimes events unfold in such a way that I actually feel I can hear God speaking in history. And for me, that's the way last year ended and this year began. I began every day of 2022 reading from my year-long devotional called Co-Workers in the Truth. It was a series of writings by Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI. And on December 31st, I woke up, I read the final passage in the book, and then turned to the news and saw that Pope Benedict XVI had died. He was a great man. He was the greatest theologian of his times. He was a friend and help to the greatest pope of my lifetime, John Paul II, who's now a saint. He brought reform to the church via Vatican II, but also defended its eternal truths. He was I always called him the last European. I always used to say he should turn the lights out on the continent when he left. But despite anything you hear about him, he wasn't a particularly conservative guy. He had a very elaborate theology. He defended reason and science as the key to living in everyday life, but he also argued that humanity could not survive materialism, scientism, and relativism, which is already being proven true. But he said we needed faith to connect us to the things that mattered. Now, of course, the moment he died, the haters turned out on Twitter. I think Victor was there to condemn it for his stance on homosexuality, to make jokes about his being forced into the Hitler Youth as a boy. The news media, whose combined intellect almost equals, I think, the IQ of one of Benedict's liver spots. I think there was one on his cheek that was almost as smart as the entire news media put together. Immediately, they went into reducing this genuine genius of a theologian and a philosopher into a series of political cliches. Just as a sample from our friends at Newsbusters, here's ABC's, or NBC's, I think it is, Ann Thompson.
Benedict came with a cartoonish reputation. As Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger under John Paul, critics branded him God's Rottweiler, a strict conservative theologian. Yet the oldest man elected pope in nearly 3 centuries took on modern issues, defending the Catholic faith against relativism, opposing women priests and homosexuality.
So he's a cartoonish old man who was opposing things at NBC, where you remember they killed the Harvey Weinstein story because they were too busy covering up for Matt Lauer, that they don't agree with. So obviously he couldn't have been a deep guy, as deep as these journalists. But this is only part of the attacks that had been going on against him forever. Remember that Hollywood and the news media are basically the same people. And Hollywood produced that award-winning, idiotic Netflix show called The Two Popes. The one thing it did deserve awards for, it had 2 of the greatest actors of our times, Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce were in it. But they depicted Benedict as this clueless old grumpy crank who had to be schooled in morality by Jonathan Pryce's wonderful liberal Pope Francis. And he was so open and relaxed and all this. Here's a quick bite of Francis lecturing the cranky, clueless Pope Benedict.
We defend 2,000 years of tradition, but Cardinal Bergoglio, he knows better.
No. We have spent these last years disciplining anyone who disagrees with our line on divorce, on birth control, on being gay. While our planet was being destroyed, while inequality grew like a cancer, we worried about whether it was all right to speak the Mass in Latin, whether girls should be allowed to be altar servers. We built walls around us, and all the time, the real danger was inside with us.
What are you talking about?
I think you know what I'm talking about.
What are you talking about? How could Benedict, an old crank, know what he's talking about? There's Vincent, after he retires as Pope, he can get a job at NBC. The thing about this is we blame on this show, as everywhere, we blame Twitter, we blame the news media, we blame Hollywood. But the thing is, as I realized as I was watching some of this, they're just the world. They're what Christians call the world. They're us. They're, the normal way of things. This is the broken, sinful world that we read about in the Bible, that we hear about in Catholic and Christian theology. This is the world that crucified Christ. They always say, it was the Jews, it was the Romans, it was the crowd, it was the mob, it was the religious leader. No, it was the world. It was the ordinary way of things. When it sees the truth, it doesn't want the truth to get in the way of the world because the world is sinful and corrupt, and so it crucifies the truth. The truth keeps coming back. That is the gospel message, but still the world keeps crucifying it and does it every day. And these are the vehicles by which it crucifies the truth. It's TV news media, it's Hollywood, it's Twitter, where all of the people are. And that's why the church and people like Pope Benedict XVI tell us to live in the world, but don't become part of the world. Always keep your heart and mind on the things that matter. And if you want to know why they say that, if that message didn't come clear to you, it came clear to me when I sat down to watch the big football game on Monday, 2 days after I found out about Pope Benedict. I sat down to watch the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals, and I was very excited to watch this game. It's a big game in the year. To coin a phrase, I was waiting all day for Monday night, and I was kicking back with real excitement and anticipation. And then, like everyone else, I'm sure you know, I watched I was absolutely gobsmacked and horrified as Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin's keeled over, and I could see it once. It was a terrible thing going on. His heart stopped after a routine tackle. They still don't know why. Everyone on Twitter knows why, but all the real people don't know why. He's a 24-year-old kid, apparently a very good guy. His mother was watching in the stands. Just an awful thing. I mean, I sat there with my jaw open watching this tragedy unfold. And here's a little clip of the medical teams reacting to this in real time on a public station. It's cut 16.
Go ahead and go over to the cot. I don't like how he went down.
We're going to need everybody. All call. We need airway.
Oh, bring everybody. We need airway doctor, everybody. Bring the cot with the medics.
You could hear the panic rising. That all call means red alert, basically. We got to give a shout out to the Bills' assistant athletic trainer, not even the athletic trainer, Danny Kellington, who got the CPR going right away. They administered CPR for what seemed endless as you were watching it, brought him back by God's good grace. He is apparently recovering. Apparently he hasn't suffered brain damage or neurological damage. They've taken the air tube out. Virtually a miracle. But guys like Kellington, and not just him, but the whole team that came out, and so far it seems like, and please let it be so, it saved this kid's life. But when this happened, something happened in front of us as we were watching that was remarkable only in the sense that it wasn't remarkable at all. And it didn't even shock us that suddenly that people, all the world went on, Twitter went on, people saying, oh, it's the vaccines when they don't know what they were talking about and blaming the NFL, and the New York Times talking about the violence of football, a bunch of girly men at the New York Times. Nietzsche said that what real men want out of life is danger and play, and that's what football gives us. It gives us danger and play, and so it's something very natural to men. But at the same time as that was going on, something else happened right in front of our eyes. People started to pray. People fell to their knees on the field and started to pray. In the stands, started to pray. Announcers started to pray. Things that you're not supposed to do in public, that have frowned upon in public, were suddenly happening. Bengals fans on the other team, he was a Bill, who had collapsed, Bengals fans who had come to the stadium specifically to engage in the harmless fun of jeering for their opponents. That's harmless fun. But suddenly they were standing outside their opponent's hospital room with lighted candles. Money started pouring into Damar's small children's charity with millions of dollars. I don't usually use this language, but to put it politely, bullshit walked and love talked. And the reason that was unremarkable is because the world is a corruption of who we are, and love is our real nature. And when Jesus said things like love your enemy, he wasn't telling you to make a special effort. He was telling you to let go of the world and be yourself, the self that you were made before it was twisted by the world. Let me read to you the last sentence I underlined in my Ratzinger devotional before the year ended and Ratzinger left the stage. He was talking about Christmas and John's famous phrase that in Jesus, the Logos, the Word, became flesh. And Ratzinger said, for John's word in Greek stands at the same time also for the meaning. Thus we would be entitled to translate the meaning has become flesh. Here's the thing I want to point out. This is the message that I got from these events. Sports, it's an odd thing. Sports is no fun unless you care about it passionately. I care passionately when I watch sports. In fact, when this young man, Damar, woke up, when he came to, he had a breathing tube in, he couldn't speak, but he wrote a note to the nurse, and the first thing he wrote was, did we win? Did we win? You have to care enormously about sports in order for sports to matter at all. You have to care passionately about your team, about your players. You have to hate the ref when he rules against you, even if he's right. You have to really care, live and die over who wins and who loses. But the minute King Death appears on the scene, you realize this thing that you care so passionately about means absolutely nothing. It takes place in the world, and death is the king of the world. The same thing is true of politics. We care passionately. We hate the opponents. We're desperate to see our side win. Each election is the most important election of our lifetime, but death will devour that too. Everything you do in life, you have to care passionately about it to do it right. But at the same time, you have to understand somewhere in your heart that it means nothing because death is king of this world and will devour it all. So you have to ask yourself, why do we have to care so passionately? Why shouldn't we just be indifferent? Why don't we not care about sports, not care about our jobs? Why don't we just not care about politics? And the thing is, it's because we are caring about something beyond that, the thing that it means, what Benedict said, that the Logos, meaning, is made flesh, and the things of the world we care about because of the things that they mean. The world is an idol, but the things that the world means that we reach through the flesh are not idols. When we care about sports, we care about excellence and dedication and decency, and that's why you fight with everything you've got to win, but you don't cheat. You don't attack your fellow, your opponent player. You don't try to hurt him. You try not to act badly on the field. You remember that it doesn't mean anything. It's just a symbol of what means something, the excellence and dedication and decency. When you care about politics, you have to remember it's about freedom. It's about fairness. It's about peace. It's not about the fact that you hate Nancy Pelosi. It's not about the fact that Nancy Pelosi hates you. It's about what you are trying to accomplish. And the people are just representative of those things, and you can do it without hating them. If Benedict is right, and I know he's right, the flesh has meaning. When we care about worldly things, we are trying to get at that meaning. And the meaning we are always trying to get at is love and creation, because God is love and creation. And love and creation are the substance and purpose of our souls. They're who we really are, not who the world tells us we are. That was God's New Year's message to me. It was like, Happy New Year, Klavan. Death devours everything. It's like, thanks a lot. All your passions and your politics and your desire and your anger and your projects and your principles, all of them are dust and will turn to dust, and so will you, unless you see the meaning of them, which is always love, because God is love. Death is the king of this world, but love is the Lord of all. Gee, that was so great. Why don't you like and subscribe? And while you're at it, subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. It really helps. We appreciate it.